I have been asked to speak on the humanitarian impact of nuclear weapon, and so I will devote my presentation in 3 parts. A little bit of background and history of the ICRC, why it is so important to focus on the humanitarian impact of nuclear weapon, and what the ICRC is doing to contribute to the prohibition and elimination of nuclear weapons. So the ICRC was founded by Henri Dunant in 1863, and we celebrate its 160th anniversary. It's an independent, neutral organization ensuring humanitarian protection and assistance for victims of armed conflict and other situations of violence. So it takes action in response to emergency in armed conflict. At the same time, it promotes the respect for international humanitarian law and its implementation, as sometimes we are called the guardian of international humanitarian law. We also develop with states new treaties that regulate and prohibit certain weapons and methods and means of warfare. And it's a very important point because when proposing the development of new instruments and weapons, it's because we have witnessed firsthand the impact of this weapon with huge humanitarian impact, like mine, cluster munition, chemical weapon, as well as nuclear weapon. That's why when the ICRC proposes new treaties, states consider them seriously, even if they sometimes don't agree with the treaty itself. I will also mention that there are 3 exceptions that we have been working on, and we never witnessed firsthand the impact, is the prohibition of blinding laser weapon. In 1995, the ICRC proposed to prohibit this weapon that they were developed by a certain state. So it never ended up on the market, and it was prohibiting as the article, the Protocol 4 of the CCW. The other one is the development of militarization of outer space. The ICRC is involved, as well as the discussion on the cyberspace. And the last one is autonomous weapon system that we didn't witness yet, but the ICRC is proposing a legally binding instrument with a 2-pronged approach: the prohibition of autonomous weapons that targets human, and regulation on other aspect of autonomous weapon systems. So I just wanted to mention that because I think that it's important. It's one of core mandate to negotiate and regulate weapons. As you know, it's very important not to forget history. So as I mentioned, the ICRC witnessed firsthand the devastating impact of nuclear weapon in 1945. And I would like to begin just by reading a couple of sentences of Dr. Marcel Junot, who arrived in Hiroshima after the nuclear bombing, and he was one of the first foreign witness and doctor on site. So I quote, "In a few seconds, thousands of human beings in the street and garden in the town center, struck by a wave of intense heat, died like flies. Others lay, writhing like worms, atrociously burned. All private houses, warehouses disappear as if swept away by a supernatural power." Unquote. With doctor, nurse, and the Japanese Red Cross, they try in near impossible conditions to assist the dying and injured. Hospitals were in ruins. There were no medicine, no bandage, no blood transfusion. Of 1,000 of patients who had taken refuge to the Hiroshima Red Cross Hospital, and you know the building because it's the memory that is very often shown from Hiroshima. So for 1,000 patients on the first day, 600 died rapidly. Dr. Junot noted the consequence of the bomb for Hiroshima Medical Corps. Out of 300 doctors, 270 died or were injured. Out of 1,700 nurses, 1,600 perished or were injured. He ends his journal with reflection of a scientific and medical nature, and with an appeal for a bomb to be banned outright. just as poison gas was outlawed in the aftermath of the Fourth World War. And you may know that the protocol of 1925 on poison gas that led to the Chemical Weapon Convention, but it takes a very long time to ban WMD, as you know. So why it is important to focus on the humanitarian consequences of nuclear weapons? Because they are a benchmark against which the moral, ethical, and legal acceptability of a weapon is to be judged. In ICRC view, it's extremely doubtful that nuclear weapons could ever be used in accordance with the principles and rules of international humanitarian law. And as you know, the purpose of IHL is to strike a balance between military necessity and human suffering. Moreover, the use or threat of use of nuclear weapons is abhorrent to the principle of humanity and dictates of public conscience. And all these concepts have been highlighted in the preamble of the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. The conflict in Ukraine and the alarming risk of nuclear weapons ask all of us to ponder and act. And it's critical to refocus the debate on what a nuclear weapon use will mean for civilian and combatant and for the natural environment on which all depend. And I think that Alan Robock made an excellent, and all of the other speakers made a very good point on the impact on the natural environment. For the ICRC, and we have very often made this point to highlight, and I think that the existence of nuclear weapons poses one of the most profound questions about the extent of human suffering we are willing to inflict or to permit in war. And it's really at the core of the humanitarian principle. And I think that it's very important to keep that in mind in the current rhetoric and discussion on nuclear weapons. I mean, I also wanted to mention that Japanese Red Cross Hospital have continued each year to treat many thousands of survivors who have suffered and died from cancer and other disease linked to the exposure to nuclear radiation. As we speak, the Red Cross Hospital in Japan are still taking care of patients that have been impacted from the first or the second generation of the nuclear weapon. And today we know even more about the long-term poisonous effect of this weapon. We cannot allow a repetition of the dark part of our past. We owe it to the survivor, the Abakusha, to ensure that the horror they suffer are never repeated. And it goes without saying that it also encompasses the victim of nuclear testing. As Alan Robock just mentioned, the Hiroshima bomb had a yield of 50 tons, what today will be described as a small nuclear weapon. But it killed 400,000 people. Providing effective medical assistance following a single detonation of this size in Hiroshima in 1945 was almost impossible. Today, it will be even worse. So the ICRC message is clear, and it has been repeated not a long time ago, just ahead of the G7 by the ICRC president and the president of the Japanese Red Cross. What we cannot prepare for, what we cannot respond to, we must prevent. So what the ICRC is doing to contribute to the prohibition and elimination of nuclear weapons. First of all, the ICRC made the first call in September 1945 to prohibit nuclear weapons. So it took a long time to be listened, like many other states and other organizations, including the UN, that propose and call for the ban of nuclear weapons, including ICANN and civil society and many scientists that I will not name, but the list is very long, and it's a good sign. And I just also wanted to mention that in 2009, the ICRC president, Kellenberger, made a statement just prior to the NPT Review Conference. And it was for the first time in 2010 in the outcome of the NPT review that the humanitarian consequences of nuclear weapons, they were mentioned. So I think that I think that it's important. It was the first time that we were kind of successful. And then it led that in 2011, the Council of Delegates of the Red Cross and the Red Cross movement adopted a resolution on nuclear weapon and an action plan. We also, as Alan Robert alluded, we participated in all humanitarian impact of nuclear weapon consequences conference, and the ICRC supported states to negotiate a treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapon. I was very lucky to participate in the negotiation, the adoption, the entry into force, and now I'm working on the implementation and universalization of this historic treaty. The entry into force of the TPNW is an answer to the call made 5 decades ago by the state that concluded the NPT to prevent the devastation that will be visited upon all mankind by a nuclear war. So it's not new. I mean, even the state that negotiated the NPT, they knew that the devastation will be by nuclear weapon. As of today, there are 68 states party to the TPNW and 27 signatories. There are several pathways to nuclear disarmament, but prohibition is an essential step. For the prohibition, it creates a disincentive for proliferation, and I think that it's a very important argument that we should keep in mind. In 2020, the ICRC and the International Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent convened an expert meeting on the humanitarian impact and risk of the use of nuclear weapons. 45 states and scientific experts participated in it. Some of them are with you in New Mexico. So hello to those who are also participated in this meeting. I would like to mention perhaps some of the key findings. No states or international body could address the immediate humanitarian emergency, nor the long-term consequences of a nuclear weapon detonation, nor provide appropriate assistance to those affected. And then it's also mean that the ICRC, not only the ICRC, but the UN and other organizations, we will not be able to fulfill our mission and our mandate, and we will not be able to address the consequences. However, coordinated preparedness may nevertheless be useful in mitigating the effects of an event involving the explosion or of an improvised nuclear device. So we also invite states to think about some preparedness. The scale of destruction and contamination after a nuclear detonation in near or populated area could cause profound social and political disruption, as it will take several decades to reconstruct infrastructure and generate economic activities, trade, communication, healthcare system, and schools. So it would really a long-term impact. In 2011, the International Committee of the Red Cross and the Red Cross Red Crescent movement also participated at the first meeting of state party in Vienna and simultaneously adopted a new resolution on nuclear weapons and a 5-year action plan to support states. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So I would just also recall that the only way to guarantee that nuclear weapons are never used again is by eliminating them. And the prohibition is an essential step for reaching this goal. And I also wanted to say on a personal note that I inspire a theater play by Christory, which is called A Family Business, and a show about how not to blow up the planet. And I hope that you will all have the chance to see it in Europe or in the US. And it's all about our collective effort and humanity. So thank you very much.